Okay. Ooh, I hear the echo. All right, cool kids. Y'all ready? Here we go. Well, first of all, let me start off with the right slide. Good afternoon. How y'all doing? Oh, wait, no, it's still good morning, right? Yeah, still good morning. So happy to see you all here. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Martin Cisneros, and I'm going to be your facilitator for the next hour. I hope you're all here for this wonderful topic about how do we evolve student agency for ELLs. So my first question is, do you have ELLs in your classroom? Yeah. So I like this quote because it reminds me one of the reasons why I'm here. I always like to tell folks, I've been in education for close to 30 years now. About 26, 27 of those years has been with me using EdTech. So I tell people I've been using EdTech before we had internet in our schools, right? And I think about this quote because with the stuff that we have today, right, we've been working so hard in education, and we've been talking about the promise of technology that now that we have it, right, we're getting close to having access for all of our students, close to one-on-one for everyone. We're still not where we need to be in education. So I saw this the other day, and it was the article that says EL population is growing, but where are the teachers to help them excel? And it talks about teacher shortage. Do you guys experience that in your neck of the woods? Yeah. What you don't know is that there are certain types of teacher shortages that we talk about, right? We are talking about the ed accomplices, right, that we saw this morning in our keynote today. The STEM teachers, the math teachers, the science teachers, the special ed teachers, but specifically the English language learning teachers. Now, when I got into our profession, my job was to become a specialist in bilingual education, but I know that was not the fact for everyone who was around me. And in today's world, this is what we're seeing, right? We're now seeing that 1 in 10 kids in the United States are now bilingual or multilingual. We also understand that by 2025, the USA is going to look like California. 1 in 4 will be bilingual or multilingual, right? And for me, when I think about this, I think about it's a serious shortage that we have going on, right? Because my thought is, I spent my first half of my career working with ELLs and working with teachers who have ELLs, but the reality, that is now everyone. That's each and every one of us. We all have ELLs in our classroom. But the thing is, not all of us are as ready, especially with the tech component. And for me I want the promise of technology to help us in what we already are doing. So my whole case today is that we need student agency for all EALs, and EAL stands for English as an Additional Language, because the reality, that's going to be most of our students, right? So when I talk about agency, what exactly do I mean? I mean the ability of a student to display a growth mindset that they want to learn, a growth mindset where they understand what their capabilities are and how they can move to the next level, right? That's what technology should allow us to do. And I highly believe that they should participate in this, right? I highly believe that our students should participate in their ownership, the aptitudes, and the interest. That self-motivation is what's going to keep them going. If you've been teaching for more than 3 years, you finally figured it out that we cannot teach all the standards that we have in front of us. And the materials that we have are not sufficient. I don't care what publisher you're coming from. So what you're going to get out of today are some methods, some strategies, some tips, some tricks, but that can really enhance all learners. I focus on English language learner because I'm a proud product of the public system here in California. I was a migrant student growing up as a kid, and I believe that each and every one of us should be able to enhance everyone's learning. So with that, I think about this, right? I think about creating change agents because that is our job. People say, these are wonderful teachers. I'm like, no, we're beyond you guys being teachers. You guys are modern learning advisors. That's what you really are, right? Because modern learning content is what we're building with our students. And as change agents, right, we're in the intersection of critical thinking and student agency. And for me, I understand that agency is not something you do overnight. You don't come to a conference and say, oh, no, I have student agency now. That's going to happen on Monday. No, this happens over time. So where do you start? First of all, let's start now, right? Let's just start saying, okay, I have work to do. We all do. I don't care how long you've been in the game. We all have work. I still come here. Like I said before, this is my 20th year presenting at CUE. And every time I come, it's like I learn from everyone around me, from people that I meet on the hallways, at lunch, of course, during the sessions. But for me, it's like I want to continue learning because I know I don't know enough. The whole reason that you're here at Fall Q is because we all have rekindled this aspiration of developing critical thinkers, right? We want to create modern learners. And in order to do that, I think that student agency has two different components, right? Number one, knowing yourself as a learner. What type of learner are you, right? Each one of us in this room are different learners. And I'm going to give you a quick example. Because of my work schedule, I have about an hour and a half commute to and from work every single day. So in other words, I have 3 hours of me time, and of course my fellow writers next to me on the 101. And at first, people say, oh my gosh, you do an hour and a half of driving? Oh, good Lord. And I took that, and I'm like, well, there's nothing I can really change, right? Unless I move, but that wasn't going to happen. But I can incorporate my type of learning. So I really got into podcasting many years ago, 15 years ago. I got into audiobooks. And some of the tools you're going to see today, I was then able to search the internet for stuff that was relevant, and I hear my PD along the way. So I learned how to use technology to enhance my own learning as an educator, right? Use my time wisely. Because people say, oh, there's not enough time to do this, there's not enough time to do that. The reality is we do have enough time. It's how we use our time. But luckily, you're here today to learn a few tips and tricks of how we do that, right? So how do we do it? And by far, I said we have to explicitly teach our students how to do this, right? My favorite thing is, so the best thing I always tell folks, I've taught every grade except 1st and 2nd, 7th, and 10th and 11th. I've taught everything else. I've been an administrator, I've been a tech director, I've been a coordinator, I've been an after school, you name it, I've run the gamut. But I always tell folks I always think of when I was in middle school, and I can't remember, this was my early years as well, and I had told my students, I want you guys to take notes on this. And I caught myself saying that. Because in my head, I didn't teach them how to take notes. I was assuming they already knew how to take notes. And then I started asking certain students, how do you take notes? And they would just stare back at me. I quickly found out that hardly any of my students were ever taught how to take notes. I was really happy, I have all these different organizers I can send. They're like, we don't know how to use these, right? So I think about scaffolding when I think about with ELLs. And with scaffolding, it's not watering down the curriculum. Scaffolding is pretty much how do we make learning happen in our classrooms, right? And I think about differentiation. And if you're a parent, you understand. If you're not a parent, you've been a kid of a parent. And you understand that if you have brothers and sisters, your parents treated you guys a little differently because we're all different. As a parent myself, I have 4, and I know I cannot do the exact same thing with each and every one of my own personal kids. So in the classroom, what makes me believe that all my kids are going to come in with the same reading level, with the same math level, with the same any level? The reality is that unicorn class does not exist. So how do we differentiate, right? And for me, this is my biggest concern. This is my biggest aha. My biggest aha is that, we talk about, 3 out of 5 students are either multilingual or they're special needs or whatever, and they keep on saying the minority. And like Ed said, I'm like, this made me question my own math. I'm like, how can the minority be 3 out of 5? Right? If 3 out of 5 kids need some type of a special accommodation, they're not the minority, they're the majority, right? So with that, I always tell folks, part of what we need to do is we need to give the students the opportunity, because we're really good at doing this, right? Being in front of the stage and talking to the students. So we need to reel that a little bit back. So less teacher talk, more student-centered learning. And we're going to begin here, right? We're going to begin with some tools and some strategies. And mind you, I mine these tools, from different places. All the resources or where I got my stuff, once you download my presentation, you're going to see it in the show notes, so you can see of where I got them from and where you can go and grab these wonderful things. But I want you to realize something else, that these are the current tools. And we all know that tools are going to change. So I want you to think about strategy, right? What are the strategies you're going to use? But let's begin the show because I want this to be a two-part. The first part is scaffolding for EALs. The second part that I want to showcase is how do we differentiate reading on the internet. Y'all ready? All right, let's do this. So, first thing I always tell folks, right, is the auto display, right? Because I think about how much video we're using in the classroom and how we're using video. So, if you're my age, you're going to remember this guy quite a bit.
Lung trouble can come from the air you breathe at work, but thanks to the American Lung Association, you can breathe a little easier. They're working to fight all this lung disease. Your lungs are...
Do y'all remember him? All right, if you're my age, you remember this guy. And he used to pop out on the commercials and stuff. So I always tell folks, for a lot of our students who are English language learners, this is what we sound like, right? We sound like this because we're like, sold to that person over there. And I know personally when I get really excited about, whatever topic I'm teaching, when I get excited, 100 miles per hour is what I'm speaking, right? And we've seen this with each other as well. So the first thing I tell folks is on YouTube, because YouTube is now pretty much everywhere, if you go down to the bottom, down here, you go under settings. If you click under settings, you want to go to where it says playback speed. And under playback speed, just bring it down a notch to where it says 0.75. It's not a huge deal, but I want you to listen to the difference. Y'all remember him, right, at the very beginning? Now I'm going to select 0.75, and I want you to hear the following.
A little easier. They're working to fight all this lung disease. Your lungs are a miracle. Take care of your lungs. They're only human. And if my lungs weren't in great shape, I couldn't have said all this.
The reason...
You see what, you saw that difference, right? It still might be a little bit fast, but the reality is I can now understand him. Right? He's like, at first he was like, and then it's like, oh, okay, now you're talking, at my pace. But once again, why am I showing you this? Because I want you to show this to your students. So once again, it's not about the teacher control. It's about allowing our students to have these tools so they can do it, right? I'll give you another thing that I do. So as a modern learner, right, the way I learn, as I said before, is through podcasts. I listen to, I think I have 128 different podcasts I listen to on different topics, and audiobooks. But I listen at 1.5 speed. That means, it's a little fast. And the person who always reminds me about how much of a geek I am is my oldest son. Because every time he gets in the car with me, he's like, Dad, what is wrong with you? What are you listening to? Because it's really, really quick. But I've gotten used to it. So when other people get in the car with me, I'm like, what's wrong? But at the same time, when I watch regular television, which is very rare now, but when I do, I'm like, why are they so slow? What is going on? So, I want to bring that to you. And the other thing that I want to bring up to you is if you are using video in the classroom, click on this little guy down here, which is the closed captioning, right? So if we click on closed captioning.
You were put into the Guinness Book, by the way, was because...
So that is kind of cool, but here's the other reason why I like closed captioning.
Sont cela tous mes hommes?
Je fais selon vos ordres. Il y en a 300. Leur descendance est assurée. Ils ont tous des enfants mâles.
Nous sommes avec toi, mon roi! Pour Sparte! Pour la liberté! Jusqu'à la mort! Il est trop jeune, il n'a même pas connu les bras d'une femme.
J'en ai d'autres encore comme lui. Astynos est aussi courageux que nous tous. Et pas plus jeune que nous l'étions quand nous avons combattu ensemble la première fois.
Tu es un très bon ami. Mais un meilleur capitaine, il ne s'en trouve pas.
Mon bon roi! Mon bon roi! L'oracle a parlé!
L'oracle a parlé. Tu ne peux pas aller combattre.
C'est la loi, mon souverain. L'armée de Sparte ne peut entrer en guerre.
Et elle n'en fera rien. Je n'ai donné aucun ordre à cet effet. Je suis là seulement pour faire une promenade, pour me dégourdir les jambes. Et c'est
All right, I'm not gonna, but you get the idea there, right? You get the idea that closed caption can mean a huge difference. If you like, indie movies or if you like foreign movies. As a kid, I don't know if you guys ever used to watch those Kung Fu movies, right? No? Saturday afternoon Kung Fu theater? No, no one? Anyways, that's how I was introduced to the Wu-Tang Clan and the Shaolin style. So those were my movies, but if they didn't have those captions on, I would have no idea. I would understand the whole action-packed sequence, but the reality is that helped me out quite a bit. And it wasn't until later that I realized, I'm like, oh, this is really good. Because when we have to think about closed captioning, we also have to think about what's happening with our students. Once again, sometimes we speak really, really fast. Here's another tip. So closed captioning, of course, research now states that if you're using closed captioning, students retain 40% of the information when they're viewing. 40%, right? So it made me realize, because what am I using to present today? I'm using Google Slides. So something they introduced not too long ago is closed captioning with Google Slides. If you haven't seen this before, if you scroll down at the bottom on the toolbar, you are going to see closed captioning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this here. And now, as I'm speaking, you see absolutely nothing. What you should be seeing, and I have no, okay, let's figure out what's going on. Text position, oh, wait. Can you hear me now? Okay, maybe this thing can't hear me. What you should be seeing is, for some reason, it was working earlier this morning, you would see my closed captioning at the bottom. Really? All right. Ah, I see what you're talking about now. Test, 1, 2. No? For some odd reason, it's not getting it. I don't know. Maybe it's just camera shy right now. That's what's going on. But I love the fact that you can do that now. And I always tell folks at the same time, oh, you know what? Let me try this one more time. Going once, going twice, and that's not, okay, we're going to just leave it alone. I love the idea, and even if you don't have a full deck with you, a full Google slide deck, one of the cool things is you can just put your topic and your central question of what you're talking about and then just continue to ramble. Because for a lot of students, once again, if it was up to them, they wish they can pause you and rewind you every now and then, right? Which then brings me to my next set of tools, right? So my next set of tools is, I always tell folks, look, every time you introduce a new concept, I don't care what you teach, you should record the first 5 minutes. Just record it, right? I like tools like Screencastify or Adobe Spark or Flipgrid, where you can record yourself teaching. And it doesn't have to be a huge production. What I'm talking about is download these tools, these free tools, install them, and as soon as you're about to go, as soon as you're about to introduce a new topic, hit record and go. Because I don't know about you, but I still have yet to meet that classroom where I teach just once and everyone gets it. Has anyone had that experience? No, right? That unicorn class does not exist. So I tell folks, if you're going to introduce something completely new, just record it. And then put it in your favorite learning management system, whether you're using Seesaw or Google Classroom or Canvas or Edmodo or whatever it is that you're using. But use these tools, once again, for you to showcase what it is that you're doing. The other component, if you really want to get really fancy, is you can use Google Slides, and as you're talking, record you doing a Google slide. Why? Because you get the closed captioning automatic at the bottom. So it's a win-win. The other component, of course, is about using visuals. So Pixabay is one, but there are many others out there as well. Adobe Spark is one that I really, really enjoy. I was going to say I'm going to do my session later, but that was yesterday. But I have my handouts and my link for another session that I did yesterday about how do we improve the lost language arts, which are viewing and visual representing information, right? And I talk quite a bit because Adobe has done a really good job of enhancing those products to make the creation of content really, really simple for students. So I love that idea. The next one is about using voice typing, right? And at first, I'm thinking, well, for certain kids with special needs, that might be a great idea. But then the more I started thinking about it, I'm like, no, I think this is a great idea for anyone. And I'm going to show you something, right? So what I'm going to do is I am going to jump on QuickTime so I can showcase this. Give me a raise of hand if you have used Google Translate before. The mobile device version. Oh, look, there we are. Oh, it's not recognizing it. Let's try it over here. Try one more time. There we go, new movie. And going once, going twice, there we are again. Martin's phone. Bam. 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 All right, now we're talking, right? So I'm going to go ahead and do Google Translate. Right, so there's a lot of really cool things about Google Translate. My favorite one is the whole camera feature, right? And this is how you know, because if you do this, right, it automatically starts to translate whatever's in front of it. So this is really slick. And if you ever thought, well, that's kind of cool, but it only does English and Spanish, I'm like, no, it does what, many other wonderful languages. And if you see that download button on the side, that means if you download that particular language, you don't need to use internet anymore. It's already installed on your phone, so you can automatically translate. So that was one of the reasons why I do it. The other one is, of course, handwriting, because I have horrible handwriting. But even though I have horrible handwriting, it automatically translates that for me, and it can speak it in a different language. Ladies and gentlemen, how much would you pay now? It gets even better, right? The other part is the conversation. I can't do it because for some reason, every time I connect it to it, it doesn't work. But I'm just going to show you what it should look like. Yeah, the volume is always off. But you see what's happening there. I'm going to turn this off, but when you use it, you can choose a different language. So let's say, for example, I'm a parent, and I only speak Spanish, and you're the teacher who only speaks English. I can speak to this in Spanish, and then it'll translate it, and then say it out in English, and then you can answer me back in English, and this will automatically translate it to Spanish to me. So we can now have a conversation going back and forth. But the real reason I love using this tool with my ELLs is for the very last tool that you see up there that says voice. Here's the reason why. Check it. Hello, everyone, exclamation mark, new paragraph. I hope you have enjoyed the past 2 days of this wonderful learning we call Q, period. I know that many of you will take away great ideas, comma, tools, comma, resources, comma, and an extended PLN for you to continue talking about these wonderful things we call teaching, strategies, and learning, period. I hope you enjoy my session today as well, period. Let's continue this conversation throughout the year, online, period. New paragraph, yours in modern learning, comma, new paragraph, Martin. And look at what happens next, ladies and gentlemen. So it took my information, and what did you see? All right? Oh, you guys can't see because I spoke too much. It automatically translated everything for me, right? And what's kind of slick about this is that I can now either listen to it in English or I can listen to this in Spanish. Why is this important? Some of the things that you caught or did not catch is the way I spoke, right? As an English language learner, when I was a kid, I didn't know what I sounded like, right? Because when I was a kid, I thought me and the Hoff were like this. If you have no idea who the Hoff is, for the younger ones, it's, the guy who used to wear the short shorts in Baywatch, the leader. But in my generation, he was the first guy who had Siri installed in his car. Yeah, I'm talking about Knight Rider. That's right. So anyway, I love this idea because with my students, what am I teaching them, right? I'm not really teaching them anything. They're learning how to pronounce correctly because this thing will not create what it creates if you don't pronounce it correctly. So this is a great way for my students to practice the speech. Oh, and the whole thing about that punctuation, right? When they get older, you're like, oh, you should already know this punctuation. So once again, it's this whole thing about pushing and pulling information. So with my students, I don't teach them the tool. I just say what they need to do. and they can go and practice it. But the one thing that I learned is the following. My kids, when they do this the first time, they'll come back. They're like, hey, Mr. Cisneros, this doesn't sound right. There should be like a pause here. How do I create a pause? And I look at them straight in the eye. I'm like, that's a great question. Why don't you go find out and then come and tell the rest of us how to do it, right? Because what I want them to learn, I want them to be curious. And then they're like, oh, Mr. Cisneros, it's a comma. Oh, thank you for letting me know. So how are you going to say it? And then they stare at me and they're like, I'll be right back. And then they go and they practice it. And guess what? After a while, I have a class full of kids who are now speak typing, but people think, well, that's going to mess them up from writing. I'm like, I'm trying to hit a different other goal here. My goal is for them to practice their speech, one. Second, my goal is for them to understand punctuation, right? The whole writing part, that's a whole different, that's not my gear towards this. And it's about how we as adults use technology, because we're very bad at just using technology the one way. No, it was built just for this. Kids are in a whole different other area. The first thing is they do is what not to do, right? I don't know, when I was a kid, and I say this to folks, right? What is that YouTube video where everybody watches other people play video games? You know what I'm talking about? There's a channel up there. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but there's a channel. And in my head, I'm like, okay, these guys they have thousands or millions of viewers, and all they do is watch other people play. And I'm like, I used to do that as a kid, but that was because I was poor. And my dad would only give me a quarter to play at the arcade. So I would be behind the kid who was playing and just watch all the stuff that he did wrong. So when I got my shot, I wasn't going to do those things, right? So I can understand kids today. But it made me realize something, though, is that viewing, it was just someone else was modeling. So as a teacher today, my thought is, why not give the tools so they can model for themselves and model for each other? Yay? All right, so let's move on with the show. So the other component, translation, phones, talking comment is another extension which allows you to leave a voice comment. Now people would say, well, Martin, I use Google Docs, I can use a regular type comment, which is great. Don't get me wrong, that's great. But if we're talking about English language learners, who are they used to? They're used to you, the educator. They're used to your voice. They're used to your cadence. They're used to your pitch. So if you're giving them instructions, they're like, oh, okay, it's more, Research once again shows that if the video or audio is coming from you, they'll understand it a lot better. Nothing against Sal Khan and Khan Academy and all those wonderful other stuff. They are great. I can never produce those. But he's not in my class every single day. I am. Right? So that's what we got to think about. But one of my favorite tools out of all these things when we talk about scaffolding for ELLs is Read and Write. And Read and Write is one of those freemium tools. And what I mean by freemium, they'll give you free up to a certain point that you got to pay, unless you're an educator. If you're an educator, you get the full-blown thing for free. I'll post this at the end of my slide deck, so I'll give you the link so you can apply for it and get the full thing. But here are a few things that I love about Read and Write. So I'm going to turn it on, and I've seen this done before. So what's happening here is I went online and I got an article, and I copied it and I pasted it into this Google Doc. Now what you're seeing here, it's an article about how some farmers are using a technology to enhance their product, right? And I thought, oh, this is a great article about how technology is really going to be in every part of whatever it is that you're doing in the near future of every career. But once again, my mind as an ELL teacher, I think about there's going to be certain words my kids are not going to understand, so that's going to be part of my vocabulary list, right? Now, what I'm about to show you, when I was, especially in the elementary years, this used to painstakingly take me forever to do, right? Y'all remember that? When you would grab the words or the vocabulary for the week, find the definition, and then you try to find a picture of it before we had Pixabay or Adobe or anything else. And I tell people I used to fake go to the doctor's office. The only reason why, to go get the old magazines from the bottom, the old crusty ones, right? I would grab those and then go home and then cut out whatever. So it used to take me forever. I want you to see what I can do now with one click of a button, ladies and gentlemen. Check it. Click. Hands are off now. The internet gophers are now doing their magic. So it's taking those highlighted words, and in a few seconds, you're going to be so amazed and that this is created automagically for you. Look at that. Not only do you get the word, not only do you get the meaning, you get a picture. Yeah, give yourselves high fives on that one. Yeah, you were today years old when you learned about this today, right? And I want you to look at the notes. Now there's a place for them to put their own notes of what that means for themselves. Yay? All right. It gets even better. You want to know why? Because once they turn this in, you can highlight whether it's a definition of theirs or whatever, but up here, this guy right here, what does that say? Yeah, you can also leave a voice note. How amazing is that? I don't know about you, but once again, not that I don't like typing, but if I can speak to my student from a place far, far away from the classroom, it's even better at certain times, right? So I can give more feedback to students because it's not about grading, it's about giving feedback and enhancing their experience. So I highly recommend that you go after that. So now, I'm not gonna go through the other ones because it's about, I have a second part that I wanna go through and I'm looking at time, so we just have enough time to go over the second one. But when I think about developing student agency, right, I go on the internet and I find these different tips and tricks from teachers. I connect with folks about, what works for you, and then I try to find the tool that connects with it, right? So I found this article, and by the way, everything that I talk about, you'll see the source. Once you download my presentation, you'll see the source in the notes. So that way, if you want to go read the article or where I got the stuff from, you can see it there. But I think about these 10 things, right? And I think about emotional sensitivity and responsiveness about our students. So it's all about care. And when I think about this, like how am I building student agency, the first thing I know is I need to learn about my students, right? I need to learn about who they are. So I think about this, and then when I first learned about Flipgrid at the Santa Clara County Office of Education where I work, we have Dr. Yi Wan, who helped create this wonderful product called My Name, My Identity, and where students take ownership about how they want their names pronounced, what it means to them, right? Because like when I was a kid, like I said before, I was a migrant kid. Spanish was my first language, and I had Miss Wonderful Higginbotham, right, as one of my elementary teachers. You know how long it took me to pronounce Higginbotham as a kid? It took me a while, but she called me Marty. My name is Martin Ricardo Cisneros Orozco, Jr., but she called me Marty, right? And it never, I never thought about it or whatever, and then it wasn't until later on, I had family come over, and were cousins, and they got together with me and my high school friends, and they're like, why do they call you Martin? Your name is Martin. And that was the first time in my life that I'm like, you're absolutely right, right? Why do I have to change my name? Why do I have to change my identity? So I think about that. So I think about that during this time, right? And I think about how, as a teacher, my job is to understand their culture, right? So I build these little games in my classroom where I introduce technology. And just to give you an example, I introduce technology so that way they have a tool set that they can use later on in life, right? Or whatever project it is that they're working on. So I tell folks, I'm going to give you guys the director's cut of this presentation now, because I didn't do this yesterday. But when people say, well, Martina, how do you find tools? How do you go that route? So this is one of my favorite sites to go to. I highly recommend it. They have great stuff. It's called edtechteacher.org. Really quick, I'm going to show you how I use this, right? I go down the middle where it says what we recommend. I click on that, and it says, Martin, what do you want to learn? I want to learn about apps that are helpful ways of using certain tools. So it says, Martin, do you want to choose an app by learning activity, device, or grade level? So I said, learning activity, right? So down here at the bottom, it has a drop-down menu that says, Martin, what do you want your students to do? Because what we should do as modern learning advisors, right, it's not about the tech, it's about the task. It's about what we want our students to do. So my first thought is think about what do I want my students to do, then I'm going to go after the tech. So this is how I show people who are just new to blended learning. So I say, okay, I want my kids to collaborate in this project. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna click on collaborate. When I click on collaborate, automatically on the bottom, you then see all the different tools that you can use, right? The first thing my eye goes to this right here. Is it easy? Grade levels, what can I use it for, right? Here's another one, Google Keep. And tells me what product. So you can filter throughout. So I always tell my teachers, when you first are planning, think about the task, then go here, figure out what you want to do, but then I do this next, right? I ask myself, what are students using in my classroom? For some of you, it might be all Chromebooks. For some of you, it might be all iPads. For some of you, it's a hodgepodge of a variety of different things. So I think about that, but my first drill is to figure out what's the tool that they can use in front of me. Then I go and I look at the other things that I can use, right? Here's the reason why. Because I know that when they leave my classroom, they're going to continue working on it, but they might not be able to take my Chromebooks home. They might have an iPad at home. They might have a PC at home. They might have something else. So I go through here and look at all the different tools, and this is what I do. Group A, you guys are going to use Padlet. Group B, you guys are going to use Jamboard. Group C, you guys are going to use Google Keep, and you guys are going to use Flipgrid. This is due next Friday. Oh, and by the way, when you present, I want a 3-minute presentation of how you use the tool. What happens? I'm like, I want this recorded, by the way. So do what you, and I don't tell them how to do it. I'm just saying, you just got to do it. Because once again, I'm gearing them towards the real world. They're just going to tell you what you need to do. They're going to tell you how. You got to figure it out. So they get together, and once again, it's me building that learning culture. It's me building that schema. So when Group A shows up, right before they do their presentation, they're like, oh, this is how we use Padlet, da-da-da-da-da-da. And what am I doing? I'm sitting in the back, and I put on that face that we all have. You know which one I'm talking about, right? The teacher poker face, where you have no clue what the students are about to do, but you're playing it as serious as heck. So you're like, yes, all right. And then you turn into the ventriloquist, right? Group number 2, I want you guys to come and do Padlet now, and you have never seen Padlet before. But the kids all know it, and they're teaching you, and you're in the back like, oh my God, I can't believe you can do that. Oh, that is great, right? And that's how, not only am I building my student schema, who else schema am I building? Mine, right? I say this all the time. If the adult is the one who's the most tired when they leave the classroom, there's something wrong with the classroom, right? Ladies and gentlemen, we all have credentials. We made it, right? We shouldn't be the most exhausted people coming out of those classrooms. It should be our students. So anyways, I think about this process, and it's not a very huge, it's not a very huge project. It's a small project. My whole reason behind it is because I want them to practice. And then I switch the tools around for the next week, and I switch them around. So within a month, all my groups have gone through the 4 different tools. Building schema. And I tell them, oh, whatever that group presented, you can't present the same thing. You have to add on top of it. So if you're the 4th group, it becomes harder, but at the same time, you were first in many others. So it balances out. Not only that, but what you also see in the classroom is who is great on doing what, right? Something else that normally kids don't have an opportunity to go through. What do y'all think? EdTech teacher, yay? Bam, all right. That was a director's cut, ladies and gentlemen. And now on with our regular programming. All right, so I'm going to move forward on some of these just because of time. And the one that I want to get to is this guy right here. Challenging, because you have my slide deck, so you'll be able to click on the other tools and figure that out. But I think about this for ELLs. As Martin, we need to water down the curriculum. I'm like, no, you don't. You do not water down the curriculum for ELLs or EALs or anyone else. What you do is you scaffold and you find ways to build that so that way the presentation makes sense to it. You chunk it some way, right? The other thing that I gave up, Martin, we're doing inquiry-based learning, we're doing project-based learning, we're doing this type of learning, and I'm like, okay, so what's the problem? They just don't get it. They're not into it. And I think about John Hattie. Y'all know John Hattie, right? Where he talks about what's the most effective teaching strategies he can do. And a few years ago, when I finally met him, it blew my mind when he said, yeah, project-based learning does not work. And I'm like, huh? Repeat that again? He's like, it doesn't work. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just spent the last 4 years in my county office pushing this, and you're telling me it doesn't work? And he made me sweat it out, right? When I finally realized what he meant, it doesn't work if it's teacher-driven. If the ideas are coming for you, boo, kids don't like it. Kids really get into it when the ideas come from them. So this is where my next tool comes in. I got this a few years back when I went to ISTE, and we were at, the team and I were at the badge, the Global Badge Summit in Chicago. And what I love about this is the following. Passion to purpose. What's your passion and what are your purpose? So we're going to do this as a group. You guys are going to help out right now. Check it. So the first one says, I'm a fan of. Someone give me an example. What are you a fan of? Animals. Great. I like to spend my time dancing. I am good at teaching. I want to learn more about we're hitting next. Now we're going to talk about our purpose. I want to advocate for. I'm going to just speed this up, SPED education. I want to raise awareness about turtles. I want to challenge. Oh, you have one of those in here. I want to help others overcome. In what? This is not a spelling show, by the way. So now look at this. Now it's going to take all the input that we put in here, and it's going to generate ideas for us. So look at this. So it turns these questions into the how might we, right? So if you ever done design sprints with design thinking, you said this is, what's your purpose here? So our purpose here is from the input that we just finished putting in is how might we use animals to advocate for special education? Could be. How about let's mix it up? How might we use dancing to advocate for special education? How might we use teaching to advocate for, you see where I'm going with this? And we can remix the bottom as well. How might we use teaching to help others overcome fears and confidence? How might we use teaching to challenge local government? You see where I'm going with this? So if we were to put our very own information in there, all of these projects would be geared towards us. And I can almost guarantee you right now that when students do this, they're going to go, oh my gosh, can I do that project? Right? And this is what I mean, once again, about building part of that. We're still doing a project. We're still going this. I haven't heard, project-based learning is a terrible idea. We're not going to get our return of investment on it. No. It works, right? Inquiry-based projects work. Project-based learning works. But it's who drives that, right? Once again, our job is to be modern learning advisor, right? Let's not do the work for them. Let them do the work. But what we're doing is we're providing those examples. I love this particular tool just because of that. Because this is coming from them. It's not coming from me. This is not Mr. Cisneros' greatest idea, once again, right? It's going to be about Star Wars and tacos. That's what our project is going to be again, right? No. So, anyways, I love that idea. All right. So I'm going to move us forward because I now start thinking about what our other wonderful keynote from yesterday, Catlin Tucker, talks about student agency, right? As a teacher, some of our biggest fears is releasing the reins of control in our classroom, right? And that's where student agency is like, eh. And the reality is there's steps that you can do. So for me, I always think about how can I increase my students' voice. And when I say my students can be sixth graders, my students can be kindergartners, my students can be my staff, right? And the first thing I think about is like, I need to help you guys develop a toolbox, a learning toolbox, right? How do you learn? And one of the things that's most important for me is to teach you how to read the internet, to chunk the internet, to differentiate the information. Because yes, all the other wonderful programs that you use, whether it's Pearson, Houghton Mifflin, they all have great stuff, but they don't have everything that they need for your kids in your classroom, right? As great as they are, they don't. Who has it? Something called the internet. Now, here's the problem with that. The internet is cool and not cool at the same time, right? You ever been to the internet lately? Right. So here's what happens, right? I'm going to take you through this process. I have about 8 minutes, so I'm just going to fly through it, but all the resources, everything that you see here, you can click, you can download, and you can play this board game at home, ladies and gentlemen. But I just want to go through the very last part. But here's the problem. The problem is sometimes we go online, and when we go online, we find an article that is pretty great. The problem when we find these wonderful articles is what is happening right now. What's happening is that all of you are really interested on the wonderful commercials you see around my article, but are not paying attention to what I'm saying right now, right? So the first thing I think about is like, okay, I need to take this distraction away. So one of the first tools that I use is something called Mercury Reader. Look what happens. I click on it, bam! What did you see? All right? It eliminated all the different advertisements. At the same time, it flipped the colors, right? So here's a great tip for you. If you're going to be on your screen for more than 2 hours, flip your colors, right? We now have dark mode, whether you're using iOS. We now have dark mode, whether you're using Chrome. Do it for your eyes. That's going to help. Number two, it also helps that it eliminated the advertisements, but I want you to also understand that I changed the text size. I always make it large, right? I can also change the typography as well. So I can make it from serif to sans serif. If you don't understand what that means, look at the TH, right? The TH is sans, and serif is, if you look at the TH, has those little tails on the corner of those letterings, right? So for some students, they like this. Others, they like this. You play with it. But what I like about this is that I can now eliminate distractions really quickly when I'm presenting information in front of the class. The other wonderful thing that you probably didn't notice is this wonderful guy right there. Why is that important? Because I don't want to live in the internet. But for those of you who do have a Kindle, if your students do have a Kindle account, you can send whatever's online over to your Kindle. And what can you do with the Kindle? You can highlight, you can take notes, you can do all kinds of wonderful things in the Kindle application. Once again, I'm trying to find different ways to improve the connection between my students and the content that I find, particularly online. Here's the next problem. Next problem is like, Martin, this is a great article. This is great. I'm going to send this to my students. I'm like, whoa. Before you send it to your students, what do you teach? Oh, I teach 6th grade. Oh, you teach 6th grade. Okay. Do you know what reading level this is? I'm going to give you guys a quick few seconds just to look at it. And in your heads, try to picture think Flesh Kincaid reading level, right? Once you thought about that, I'm now going to tell you that I have a tool that says it's 13th grade. I don't know about you, but when I was teaching 6th grade, I have very few students that could teach at that reading level. Now, as an educator, what do? Do I throw it away? I'm like, It has really good content. Once again, we're talking about rigor, right? If we're talking about rigor, I'm not going to throw this away. What I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out a way so I can then chunk it. But I kind of lied to you in a bit because it was 13 point whatever for those 2 paragraphs. If I highlight the whole thing and click on my crafty level, which is the name of the tool, we really find out that the whole article is written at 11th grade, 5th month. Still, a little bit too high for most of my 6th graders, especially if they're ELLs. So what do I do next? What I do next is I introduce this wonderful tool called TLDR. I love this tool. Why do I love TLDR? For the fact that I can do the following with it. When I click on it, once again, it goes out to the internet. The wonderful little gophers of the internet go to work, and they use artificial intelligence to chunk that information into that paragraph. If I have 4 different reading levels, anybody here have 4 different reading levels in their classroom? Yay, right? Look at this on the left-hand side. If I click on that, it chunks it 4 different reading levels. And you're like, what? How does it do that? This is new. This is awesome. This is the future. And I unfortunately going to tell you that this technology has been around for about 20 years. If you're a Mac user, you've been missing out on the following. You highlight, you go to services, you go to something called summarize, you click on it, and not only can your Mac summarize in paragraph, it can also summarize to sentences. What? I know what you're thinking. Where was this when I was doing my master's program? Right? I hear you. But ladies and gentlemen, it gets even better than that. So I love TLDR, but then I discovered something called Resumer. And what Resumer does, it allows me to do the following. So it takes that same article, right? Takes that same article, it's processing it, and as it's processing, it tells me that it reduces 20 to 27%. It tells you how many words and how many words are total. I love the manual feature up here because Resumer is something you can install in any Google Chrome web browser. But look at this guy right here. Do you see that? That means, raise your hand if you have more than 4 different reading levels in your classroom. Yeah, I got you. What level you got? I got you. What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? Right? I can now chunk this to whatever reading level my students have. Yay? Oh, it gets even better. Right? It gets even better. Look at this. You scroll down, and then you can export these things out in PDF, Microsoft Word document, or you can copy this, right? It gets even better because I'm now going to go to this place called Analyze. Oh, I love this part right here. I geek out on stuff like this, ladies and gentlemen, but here's the reason why I geek out. I geek out because now this wonderful thing gave me my academic vocabulary list from that article. Right? Right? Not only that, but has anyone in here ever read a Kindle book on a Kindle? One of the things that you're going to find out when you do that, and even if you do it on Apple Books, it does the same thing. It highlights the most important sentences in that article. As an ELL myself, once again, if you want to take a picture, this is a full-blown ELL right in front of you, right? What I tell folks, this helps me out, right? Because when I was at the university, I never bought the new books. I always bought the used books, and I would see everyone's highlight, and that somewhat helped me on certain points. I didn't get the ones that were fully highlighted, somewhat minimum, right? But I was seeing like, oh, this must be important because they highlighted this already. Someone has done the pre-work. It's similar to that, but we're now using social, the social component of it, where many people say, no, this is the most important part of this article. Yay? Ladies and gentlemen, I wish I had more time with you, but my time is up. If you want to continue learning about what we've been talking about, all my information, and I tell this to folks, my whole my whole deck is like an Easter egg hunt. Click on the titles. Click on the images, because what you're going to see at the very end is that I probably built 3 days worth of learning into a 1-hour presentation. But the one thing I do want you to take away from this thing is I need you to humble yourself and be a student of your students. Because if you don't understand who's in front of you, it's going to be very hard for you to teach. These are tools and strategies. The strategies keep. The tools are going to change, but now I showed you how to fish with EdTech Teacher at least, right? And if you like this conversation, if you have more questions, you can connect with me online. And like our favorite fearless leader, John Corippo, always says, once you attend one of our Q sessions, we are now your tech buddies for life. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Martin Cisneros. You can find me at thetechprophet.com or at thetechprophet on Twitter. Thank you.